Know your place, boy. The words land like venom in a silent courtroom, followed instantly by the crack of a hand across a man's face. The sound echoes against marble walls, making the gallery freeze in shock. A red mark blossoms across the cheek of the man who has just been struck. He does not flinch, does not retaliate. He simply breathes in deeply, steadying himself, while the officer who hit him towers above with cold eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. That officer is Daniel Briggs, a 20-year veteran of the force with a reputation for arrogance that bleeds into every gesture he makes. Steam curls up from the coffee cup in his other hand as though mocking the chill in his stare. His words drip with disdain. The defense table is for real lawyers, not janitors. With one shove of his hand, Briggs sends a briefcase tumbling to the floor. The latch bursts, scattering papers, files, and notes across the polished wood and stone. Among them, a single framed family photograph skids under a bench, its glass clinking faintly as it comes to rest. The man's hand trembles as he looks at it, but only for a moment. Then he takes one long breath and rises. "Pick that up," Briggs commands, his voice dropping lower, sharper. The gallery holds its breath. The bailiff's hand hovers near his radio. The clerk covers her mouth, wide-eyed. Everyone watches. The man does not bend. He straightens his tie, gathers himself, and begins walking, not to the gallery, but toward the raised bench of the court itself. Every head turns, eyes locked on him as he climbs the steps with quiet dignity and reaches for the gavel resting on its block. What none of them realize yet is that this man, calm, quiet, and insulted as though he were nobody, is the very judge who will preside over the trial. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, Officer Daniel Briggs strides into the courthouse with the same swagger that has defined his career. 2 decades in uniform have carved confidence into his walk. His badge gleams as he moves through the security checkpoint, parting the crowd as naturally as a shark cuts through water. The marble hallway magnifies each step. Sunlight filters through tall windows, catching dust motes that spin in the air like tiny witnesses to his arrogance. Fellow officers nod at him with practiced deference. He nods back without slowing, his reputation preceding him. For 3 years running, his arrest numbers have outpaced everyone in the precinct. He calls that success. Others call it something else, though few dare to say so out loud. He glances at his watch. 30 minutes until he is due to testify. Time enough for a coffee. At the end of the corridor, Assistant District Attorney Clara Hayes pores over notes from a leather portfolio beside a coffee cart. Her composure is polished, her suit crisp, her movements precise. "Morning, Clara," Briggs calls out as if greeting an old friend. He grabs a coffee without bothering to pay. "Ready to put another criminal away?" Clara forces a smile, but it's thin. "It's possession, not distribution, Officer Briggs. And Judge Harris is presiding today?" Briggs takes a sip of his coffee, unfazed. "Never heard of him. He transferred here last month from the Northern Circuit. He's known for being thorough, especially with police testimony." Briggs smirks. "As long as he knows which end of the gavel to use, we're fine. My testimony is solid." Clara lowers her voice, her tone serious. "Then keep it professional. Judge Harris has no tolerance for theatrics." In another wing of the courthouse, Judge Marcus Harris adjusts his reading glasses and studies the files spread before him. At 52, with salt and pepper hair cropped close and calm eyes behind his lenses, he carries himself with quiet gravity. For 2 decades, he built his reputation as a relentless prosecutor before stepping onto the bench 5 years ago. Now he has been transferred here, into a district scarred by years of complaints about discriminatory policing. Judge Harris has made it a habit to walk the courthouse without his robe before hearings. He prefers to see how officers, clerks, and attorneys behave when they believe he is just another face in the crowd. His colleagues call it his civilian walkthrough. Closing the folder, he sets aside his glasses and straightens his tailored but modest suit. Today, like every day, he intends to witness how people carry themselves when they think no authority is watching. He steps through the public entrance of courtroom 3A without announcement. The bailiff barely glances up. 2 uniformed officers by the door exchange smirks as he passes. Harris does not catch their words, but he does not need to. He notes the dismissive glances. He sets his briefcase down at the defense table with deliberate calm. From the back of the room, Daniel Briggs notices. His irritation sparks instantly. Something about this stranger unsettles him. The man's clothes are neat but understated. His posture radiates quiet confidence. Briggs narrows his eyes. This man cannot possibly be an attorney, more likely a paralegal. Or worse, a nobody who doesn't belong here. Court begins in 15 minutes. Briggs decides to make that clear, and so the collision begins. A collision between unchecked arrogance and unshakable dignity. What started as a slap is about to unravel into something far larger, exposing cracks not just in one officer's judgment, but in the system that allowed him to flourish. But first, Briggs approaches the table. Briggs looms over the defense table, his shadow stretching across the papers Judge Harris is reviewing. "You're in the wrong seat," Briggs declares, his voice loud enough for the gallery to hear. "This is for licensed attorneys. Move along." Without lifting his eyes, Harris replies calmly, "I'm aware of the schedule. Thank you." The dismissal makes Briggs bristle. He steps closer, lowering his voice but not his hostility. "You're not hearing me. This table is for authorized personnel only." Harris finally meets his gaze, steady and unflinching. "I am authorized to be here." The officer's jaw tightens. "Let's see some ID then." "I don't believe that's necessary," Harris answers evenly. Clara Hayes approaches quickly, sensing danger in Briggs's tone. "Daniel, we should prepare for testimony." "1 second," Briggs interrupts, holding a hand up to silence her. His eyes remain locked on Harris. "I just want to make sure everyone's where they're supposed to be." "Last chance, buddy. Move to the gallery or show your credentials." The room seems to shrink as Harris rises, standing eye to eye with Briggs. "Officer, I suggest you focus on your testimony rather than courtroom seating arrangements." Briggs narrows his eyes. "How do you know I'm an officer?" "Your badge is visible, and you carry yourself with the arrogance I've seen too often in men who wear it," Harris replies, his tone calm but edged. The clerk gasps softly. Clara's warning voice trembles. "Daniel, that's enough. Let's go." Briggs ignores her. He takes another step forward until the space between them is a breath. "You got a problem with law enforcement, friend?" "I have a problem with anyone who abuses their authority." The tension thickens like a storm front rolling in. People entering the courtroom slow their steps, drawn to the standoff. The clerk slips out quickly, whispering to the bailiff in the hall. Briggs tilts his head, his tone mocking. "You know what? I don't have time for this." He reaches for the briefcase. In one swift move, he yanks it off the table. The latch snaps. Papers fly like startled birds, scattering legal briefs, case notes, and photographs across the floor. One framed photo, a family portrait, skids under a bench. "Daniel," Clara hisses, her face pale with horror. "Stop this right now." But Briggs is smirking, his boot nudging papers further across the floor. "Court documents, sure. And I'm the Attorney General." He kicks the family photo, sending it clattering against the base of a pew. The doors open wider as attorneys and spectators stream in. Conversations halt. The sight before them is enough to silence the usual courtroom chatter. "Pick those up," Briggs orders, pointing at the scattered papers. Harris doesn't move. "No?" Briggs chuckles in disbelief. "You don't get to say no to me." He leans closer, his voice dropping but carrying across the hushed room. "I said pick them up." The bailiff edges forward cautiously. "Officer Briggs, maybe step back." "Stay out of this," Briggs snaps, never looking away from Harris. This man needs to learn respect for proper procedure. Harris takes a slow, deliberate breath. "What you're doing has nothing to do with procedure. Kneel down and pick up your mess," Briggs demands, louder now, daring him in front of everyone. The crowd shifts uncomfortably. A woman in the back pulls out her phone, recording discreetly. "I will not," Harris replies. That refusal flips a switch. Briggs lunges, grabbing Harris's shoulder, shoving him down with sudden force. "I said kneel." Gasps ripple through the courtroom. The sound of disbelief bounces off the walls. Someone whispers, "Oh my God." And there it is, Judge Harris forced to one knee in his own courtroom. "There we go," Briggs says with grim satisfaction. "Now collect your things and get out." Clara steps forward in panic. "Daniel, stop. This is madness." But Briggs holds firm, pressing Harris lower. "He's disrespecting the court." "Just doing my job." On one knee, Harris reaches slowly into his jacket. Briggs reacts instantly, twisting his arm. "Hands where I can see them," he barks. "I'm reaching for my identification." Harris answers, calm even as pain flickers across his features. "Sure you are," Briggs sneers, bending his arm further behind his back. "Maybe a night in a cell will fix your attitude." The bailiff moves more firmly now. "Officer, that's enough. Cuff him." Briggs interrupts, his voice sharp. obstruction of justice, and resisting an officer. The bailiff hesitates, glancing between Harris and Briggs. The tension has reached a breaking point. The gallery has gone silent, the kind of silence that always comes just before disaster. Then a voice cuts through, strong and unmistakable. "What time is it, Mr. Dalton?" The clerk, startled, fumbles for his watch. 9:17, Your Honor." Every head whips toward the judicial entrance. Standing there is Chief Judge Eleanor Brooks, her silver hair framed by the authority of her black robe. Her eyes are steel. "Release that man immediately, officer," she commands. Briggs falters, grip loosening. "Judge Brooks, this individual was—" "That individual is Judge Marcus Harris," she interrupts sharply, "and he is presiding over this case." The color drains from Briggs's face as the truth sinks in. Harris rises slowly, straightening his tie with composure that only deepens the humiliation of his opponent. "Your Honor?" Judge Brooks asks, her tone measured but concerned. "Do you require a recess?" Harris shakes his head. "That won't be necessary." "Thank you. Very well. I expect a full report," Brooks replies, turning sharply and leaving as suddenly as she arrived. The room remains stunned. Harris gathers his papers with steady hands, motions to the bailiff, and says simply, 10-minute recess. Officer Briggs remains in the courtroom. The silence that follows is absolute. Behind the closed door of his chambers, Judge Harris finally allows the tension to show. His hands tremble slightly as he lowers himself into the chair behind his desk. The adrenaline still courses through his body, sharp and unrelenting, but his voice remains steady when he speaks into the phone. "Caleb, it's Marcus. I need you to pull some files for me. Everything you can find on Officer Daniel Briggs. Priority access." He hangs up and sits back, breathing slowly until the shaking in his hands subsides. The ticking of the wall clock fills the silence. He knows this is bigger than one insult, bigger than one act of arrogance. What unfolded in the courtroom was a symptom of something that had been festering for years. A knock breaks his thoughts. The bailiff steps in, face etched with concern. "Your Honor, are you all right? Should I call for medical—" "I'm fine," Harris interrupts softly. "But I need you to contact Internal Affairs quietly. Ask them to pull every arrest record linked to Briggs over the last 5 years, especially those involving minority suspects. And one more thing. Make sure all courthouse security footage from this morning is preserved." The bailiff nods gravely and exits. Harris opens his laptop and drafts a brief message to the Judicial Review Board. Not a formal complaint, not yet. Just a notification that a troubling pattern may exist and that an investigation should begin. He stops for a moment, his eyes drawn to the black robe hanging neatly in his closet. He rises, lifts it from its hanger, and slides it over his shoulders. The weight steadies him. In the mirror, he studies his reflection. The same man Briggs tried to humiliate, now framed by the robe of judicial authority. He whispers to himself, "This isn't about you. It's about everyone who couldn't fight back." With resolve hardening in his chest, he walks toward the courtroom door. His phone buzzes. A message from Caleb. "Found complaints against Briggs. You're not the first." When Harris returns to the bench, the atmosphere changes instantly. The room that watched him on his knees now sees him in full regalia. Authority radiates from him as he takes his seat. Briggs shifts uneasily at the prosecution table, sweat forming at his temples. Clara whispers urgently in his ear, but he does not respond. "Court is now in session," Harris announces, his voice commanding. "State of Ridgemont versus Carter. Possession with intent to distribute." The proceedings move forward as though nothing had happened, but every word carries weight. When the time comes for testimony, Harris looks directly at Briggs. "Officer Briggs, you are sworn to tell the truth in this courtroom. Do you understand this obligation?" Briggs clears his throat. "Yes, Your Honor." "Proceed with your testimony regarding the arrest." Briggs begins, describing how he discovered drugs during a traffic stop. But the words sound thinner than usual, stripped of their swagger. Harris's steady gaze never leaves him. "You stopped the vehicle for what reason?" Harris asks, pen poised. "Broken tail light, Your Honor." "And was the dash camera operating during this stop?" Briggs hesitates. "There was a malfunction that day." Harris makes a note. "Interesting. And your body camera? Also malfunctioning?" The silence before Briggs responds stretches thin. "Yes, sir. Both malfunctioned." Harris leans slightly forward, his tone still neutral but edged with steel. "Both cameras failed at the same time?" "Yes, Your Honor." The defense attorney perks up, sensing an opening. Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to cross-examine. Proceed, Harris says, his eyes never leaving Briggs. The defense attorney rises, holding a file. Officer Briggs, how many of your recent arrests involved camera malfunctions? Objection. Clara Hayes interjects sharply. Irrelevant and prejudicial. Overruled, Harris says evenly. The officer will answer. Briggs shifts uncomfortably. I don't keep track of equipment issues. The defense attorney presses. Then let me rephrase. How many of your arrests involving minority suspects experienced camera malfunctions? For the first time, a flicker of hope crosses the defendant's face. The question hangs in the air, charged with implications no one can ignore. The courtroom feels electric, and everyone knows the story is only beginning to unravel. Briggs's jaw tightens, his eyes darting between the defense attorney and the judge. I arrest criminals. Period, he says flatly. If certain groups commit more crimes, that's not my fault. A wave of murmurs sweeps through the gallery. The defendant's mother covers her mouth, disbelief etched into her face. Harris brings the gavel down with a sharp crack, silencing the room. Order, he says firmly. His gaze turns back to Briggs. To clarify, officer, you're saying you enforce the law equally, regardless of race? Yes, Your Honor. Briggs replies stiffly. Then you should have no objection to your arrest records being examined for patterns, Harris states. Briggs clenches his fists under the table. My record speaks for itself. Highest conviction rate in the precinct. Convictions based on evidence obtained through proper procedure? Harris asks, his tone deceptively mild. Which brings us back to these equipment failures. The defense attorney steps forward, producing another document. Your Honor, we've compiled instances where Officer Briggs reported equipment malfunctions during arrests. 87% of those cases involved minority suspects. The room stirs again. Briggs shoots to his feet, his face red. This is character assassination. Sit down, officer, Harris orders, his tone unyielding. Briggs stays standing, defiance burning in his eyes. You're letting them twist numbers to fit their narrative. This is a circus. Final warning, Harris says, his voice calm but cutting. Sit down or face contempt. For a long, tense moment, Briggs stares at him, chest heaving. Then, with a scrape that echoes off the walls, he drops back into his chair. The defiance remains, but for the first time, cracks are showing in his armor. Defense may continue, Harris instructs. The attorney nods and signals to an assistant. A small screen is wheeled forward. With the court's permission, we'd like to play a video. Harris gestures. Proceed. The footage begins to roll. Grainy but clear enough, it shows Briggs searching a vehicle before writing the citation for the alleged broken taillight. Clara Hayes leaps to her feet. Objection. This video wasn't disclosed during discovery. The police department claimed no footage existed. The defense attorney doesn't flinch. We obtained this independently last week from a business security camera. Harris examines the timestamp, then looks at Clara. Was the prosecution aware of this video? Her hesitation answers before her words do. No, Your Honor. The silence that follows is devastating. Harris turns to Briggs. Officer, you testified under oath that the traffic violation prompted the search. This video suggests otherwise. What context justifies contradicting your sworn testimony? Briggs stands again, finger stabbing toward Harris. You've been after me since the moment I walked in here. Officer Briggs, Harris says, voice sharp as a blade. You are in contempt. This entire trial is a setup, Briggs explodes, his voice shaking with rage. You tricked me. You pretended to be some nobody at the defense table. You misled me. I never pretended to be anything, Harris replies, his composure unwavering. You made assumptions. Assumptions based on what you saw. Briggs spits out his words like venom. You misled me by being black in a courtroom. The gallery gasps in horror. Clara covers her face. The bailiff stiffens, waiting for the judge's command. Harris's calm fractures only slightly, his jaw tightening. Bailiff, remove Officer Briggs from my courtroom. The bailiff steps forward. Clara rises, her voice desperate. Your Honor, may we request a recess? Granted. 15 minutes, Harris declares, standing. His eyes never leave Briggs. Officer Briggs in my chambers now. The courtroom buzzes with whispers as the bailiff escorts Briggs out. For the first time, the officer's swagger looks shaken. The air is heavy with the knowledge that what just erupted in front of them will not stay confined to these walls. And behind the closed doors of the judge's chambers, a reckoning is about to begin. Inside the chambers, Briggs paces like a caged animal. His tie hangs loose, his face flushed, and a vein pulses visibly at his temple. Judge Harris sits calmly behind his desk, his hands folded, every inch the opposite of the storm in front of him. "You compromised this entire case," Harris says evenly. "Me?" Briggs snaps, spinning to face him. "You set me up. You humiliated me in front of everyone." Harris lifts a folder from his desk and lays it flat. "Daniel Briggs, 20 years on the force, 16 excessive force complaints, all dismissed. 92% of your drug arrests involve minorities. 43% of your evidence submissions have documentation issues. Did I miss anything?" Briggs stops pacing, eyes narrowing. "Where did you get that?" "I've had it for weeks," Harris answers. "I am not just a newly transferred judge. I chair the Judicial Oversight Committee on Discriminatory Policing. Your name has surfaced more times than you'd care to admit." For the first time, Briggs looks shaken. The bravado falters, replaced by dawning fear. "This is a witch hunt." "No," Harris says quietly. "This is accountability." He removes his glasses and sets them on the desk. "What you did today wasn't planned, Daniel. I walk into courtrooms unannounced to see how officers treat people when they think no one important is watching." "You confirmed exactly what your record already suggested." A knock interrupts the silence. The bailiff enters, followed by Chief Judge Brooks and Police Commissioner Margaret Steele, a stern woman in her 60s with a posture that leaves no room for doubt. "Judge Harris," Brooks says. Commissioner Steele arrived as soon as she heard about the incident. The commissioner fixes Briggs with a stare that could cut glass. "Officer, you're suspended effective immediately pending investigation." "On what grounds?" Briggs demands, trying to summon his swagger again. "Assaulting a sitting judge for starters," Steele replies coldly. "Add to that potential falsification of testimony and evidence tampering." "You can't do this," Briggs protests. 20 years of service makes it worse," Steele interrupts sharply. "You should know better. And we are not stopping with you. Every case you touched, every supervisor who ignored red flags, every partner who kept silent, they will all be reviewed." Briggs's face pales as the walls close in. "You're using me as a scapegoat for the whole department." "No," Harris says, rising to his feet. "You're facing consequences for your own actions. The system that enabled you will face its own reckoning." He turns to Steele. "This morning, Officer Briggs physically assaulted me in open court, attempted to humiliate me publicly, and used racial intimidation tactics. I want formal charges filed, already underway," Steele replies without hesitation. Briggs lets out a bitter laugh. "So that's it? 2 decades thrown away because you got your feelings hurt?" Harris steps closer, his voice calm but unyielding. "No. 2 decades thrown away because you abused your badge and believed no one would stop you. Today that illusion ends." Steele steps forward. "Officer Briggs, surrender your badge and weapon to the duty officer downstairs. Report to Internal Affairs at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." For the first time, Briggs's shoulders sag. Defeat weighs him down. "My union will fight this," he mutters. "Then call your lawyer," Steele replies coldly. As they escort him out, Briggs leans close to Harris, his voice low, his bitterness undimmed. "You have no idea who you're messing with." But outside the chambers, whispers already ripple through the courthouse. Within hours, news of the confrontation begins spreading like wildfire. By the end of the day, security footage leaks online, showing the moment Briggs forced Judge Harris to his knees. The clip explodes across social media. By evening, hashtags trend nationwide. Cable networks play the video in endless rotation. Editorials flare. Commentators argue. Union leaders scramble for damage control. What happened in one courtroom has burst into a national firestorm, and the fallout is only beginning. The video of Briggs shoving Judge Harris to his knees spreads across the country in hours. By the next morning, every news channel runs it on repeat. Commentators dissect every frame. Community leaders call for reform. Defense attorneys file motions to reopen cases tied to Briggs. What began as one officer's arrogance now threatens to unravel years of convictions. Inside a crowded conference room, the police union scrambles. Some leaders argue to distance themselves from Briggs entirely. Others insist abandoning him would betray the rank and file. Voices clash, tempers flare. "He forced a judge to kneel on camera," the union president snaps, slamming his pen on the table. "There's no defending that." Another suggests pivoting to a mental health defense, citing stress and trauma. But everyone knows the Oversight Committee has his entire record. Any attempt to shield him will only expose more. At the district attorney's office, chaos reigns. Clara Hayes fields endless calls as defense lawyers line up to challenge every conviction Briggs ever touched. Her deputy warns, "We're looking at hundreds of tainted cases, many with minority defendants." Clara rubs her temples, feeling the weight of a crumbling system. "Pull every file, prioritize anyone still in prison, and drop today's charges against Carter immediately." In Harris's chambers, the Oversight Committee convenes. 12 judges sit around a long table, reviewing data and video evidence. One judge leans forward. "What happened to you is appalling, Marcus, but it gives us leverage we've never had." Harris nods slowly. "This isn't about leverage. It's about lasting change." The committee agrees to push for sweeping reforms, mandatory body cameras with automatic uploads, independent oversight boards with authority, and systemic reviews of arrest patterns. Meanwhile, at police headquarters, Commissioner Steele addresses precinct captains. "Charts project disproportionate arrest rates. Briggs didn't develop these habits in a vacuum," she declares. "Every supervisor who ignored red flags is under review. Every partner who stayed silent will be questioned." A captain raises an objection, arguing one officer shouldn't tarnish the whole department. Steele cuts him off. "This isn't one officer. The data proves a pattern. Judge Harris's experience only gave it a face." At home, Briggs sits alone. The phone rings endlessly with reporters seeking comment, but the support he expected from colleagues has dwindled. When his former partner visits, Briggs tries to vent. "They're making me the fall guy for standard procedure," he growls, pouring another drink. His partner shakes his head. "We both know some of those arrests weren't clean. I'm not going down with you." The words hit harder than any punch. The next week, Harris dismisses charges against Carter in open court. The young man collapses into tears as his mother embraces him. Outside, cameras swarm Harris. Reporters shout, "Do you forgive Briggs?" Harris answers firmly, "Forgiveness isn't the issue. Accountability is, not just for one man, but for a system that allowed this for years." Within months, reforms take hold. Body camera malfunctions plummet. Cases built on flimsy evidence collapse. A civilian oversight board gains real teeth. Officers in training are taught de-escalation and cultural awareness by those once wrongfully convicted. Trust grows cautiously where it had long been shattered. For Briggs, the reckoning comes in the disciplinary board hearing. His uniform hangs loose on him now, his eyes hollow. The evidence piles high. Statistics, complaints, video, testimony. Commissioner Steele delivers the verdict. Overwhelming evidence of misconduct, bias, and abuse of authority. You are terminated, effective immediately. Your pension is revoked. Criminal charges will proceed. Briggs tries to protest, but the words ring empty. When he leaves the building, reporters surround him. Former colleagues watch from windows above. One rookie whispers to his sergeant, "Was this really fair? 20 years gone for one mistake?" The sergeant shakes her head. This wasn't one mistake. This was the first time he got caught. Months later, Harris stands before a national conference of judges, lawmakers, and officers. His voice carries across the hall. The incident with Briggs wasn't about one man. It revealed the fault lines in our system. Real reform means procedures that protect everyone, not just punishing individuals. He outlines the changes: tamper-proof cameras, civilian oversight with enforcement power, statistical tracking of arrest patterns, revised training protocols. Applause rises, but Harris raises his hand for silence. This work is never finished. The moment we believe it is, old habits return. Reform requires vigilance. In the audience sits Carter, now dressed in a suit, a law school textbook under his arm. Afterward, he approaches Harris. "Your Honor, I never imagined I'd be preparing for law school instead of serving time. I want to use my experience to fight for others." Harris smiles warmly. "Your perspective will be your greatest strength." That evening, as Harris returns to his courtroom, he observes the subtle but profound changes. Officers testify with body cameras prominently displayed. Attorneys challenge evidence more rigorously. Defendants are treated with dignity, not suspicion. What began as humiliation has grown into transformation. When asked later what kept him calm that day, Harris answers with honesty, "I was furious. But anger gives power to the abuser. What mattered wasn't punishing one officer. It was proving that dignity and accountability can reshape an entire system." And so the story of a single slap in a courtroom became a turning point for a city, then a state, and perhaps a nation. Not because of vengeance, but because one man refused to bow to arrogance and chose instead to stand for justice.